Greetings everybody, I'm Marcus Whitman and welcome to my channel, That Franchise Guy, where you'll find fresh NFL talk and of course all things Madden. To my subscribers, you surely noticed a lack of content from me over the last week or so. Well, this is because I have been laboring away at my 2018 real roster update for Madden 18, available now on Xbox One. For those who are unfamiliar with my roster, let me use this video as a tool to explain why you should be using my roster and not the vanilla one. Guys, Madden, like I'm sure for many of you, is my favorite game out there, and not just Madden, but Madden's franchise mode. The only problem is for the last 3 years or so, since I started creating my own roster, I have found the vanilla EA roster to offer a terribly deflating and non-immersive experience. Why? Well, the average rating is set way too high and it's far too easy to build a winning team. Let me explain. Managing an NFL team is and should be, even in a video game, an incredibly complex and difficult task. As an NFL GM, perhaps your largest role becomes weeding through the thousands of mediocre NFL players in an effort to fill out your roster with depth that you can only hope remains competitive when you suffer injuries or lose a player in free agency. The thing is, as we see year after year, in the framework of a league with over 3,000 players, there is a slim percentage of those players actually capable of being just a marginal starter. Just look at the teams year after year who suffer one or two injuries at a single position and really drop off. Last season, the Vikings O-line, the Packers corners, the Chargers running backs come to mind. How did those guys look when they had to dip into their depth chart? And could they just whip out their checkbook and bring in a free agent like you can in Madden, as there are a plethora of mid-70 overall players readily available at each position? No. The one team that tried this last season was the Vikings, who found the best available left tackles to be Jeremiah Searles and Jake Long. Well, how'd that work out for them? The other problem with EA's vanilla roster is they are far too comfortable rating players as near superstars when in reality they are much closer to league average. Guys like Marvin Jones, William Gay, frickin' Perry Riley, who's been a free agent all summer, is in the mid-80s. My roster will reveal a true differential in talent. You will notice not just in how they play, but you must pay guys like Julio Jones so much more compared to a Golden Tate, which is not the case in the vanilla roster. So let's look at how my framework compares to EA. As I've been sort of setting things up here with this monologue of sorts, is that there seems to be, in my experience, a tiering system that actual NFL teams more or less evaluate players by, and I have 7 tiers. So starting at the bottom are your roster hopefuls, tier 7, 64 overall and lower. God forbid you end up having to start someone in this category, but these are mostly NFL rejects, your D. Milliners or Zach Mettenbergers, or undrafted free agents. And then after that, you have your replacement level guys, 65 to 69 overall. Now, this is what should be a mass majority of NFL players, and this tier right here is my biggest problem with EA's roster because there aren't enough players in this tier. There are too many guys above this tier. I mentioned NFL GMs having to weed through all the mediocre talent in the league. Well, that's this tier right here. Virtually every available free agent in the league should fall in this tier. NFL veterans who have never won a starting job, or young prospects who are strictly viewed on a developmental basis, will also fall here. But these are usually the guys who end up starting in the event of an injury, unless you could be so lucky as to have a backup who also falls into the next tier, which, as you would expect, is called the starters tier. These are guys, usually week 1 starters, who either have yet to show anything truly special or reliable veterans, often playing on a second or third NFL roster. While you're comfortable rolling a starter out, one of these guys on Sundays, as a GM, you should hope that the guy either develops or that you can eventually find an upgrade at the position. Like the replacement level tier, this should be a massive group of players, and as far as relating a Madden rating to real life production, I see a baseline starter in the NFL in Madden being the range of 70 to 74 overall. The next tier is what I like to call stud juniors. These guys are starters, but plus starters. Good enough that you shouldn't have to replace him, but probably not ideal if he's your best player at that position on your team. This is your John Brown, Mohamed Sanu, Alex Smith, Morris Claiborne, all players who, by the way, are ranked by EA outside of this tier in the next tier, which are my studs. Studs are few and far between. They are players you would hate to see leave your organization, true playmakers and guys that have shown enough to make you think this guy could become a game-wrecking player, a star player. Stephon Diggs, Jordan Hicks, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Then, where we start to talk about top 10 players at most positions, the star level, 85 to 89 overall, and above that is the superstar tier. Franchise players, 90 plus overall. A lot of NFL teams don't even have one. So I've been showing you EA's league framework here. As you can see, there is a big mess in the middle, and there are actually more players in Tier 4 than Tier 5, which makes no sense. With this setup, the market for a player like Marvin Jones or Morris Claiborne, who should fall in Tier 4, is completely saturated in Madden. Now, how do you think these relatively average players get $8 million contracts? Supply and demand. There just aren't that many players that fall into this tier. So let me show you the framework with my roster. Pretty crazy, right? You can now see how the supply of guys in the middle plummets, which in turn adds value to guys rated in the mid-70s. You can see that this big mess that we saw in EA's roster has been shifted to the replacement level players and base level starters, where the mass majority of the league should be sitting. You also noticed a slight upwards trend at the very end, at the top level. Well, this is done to differentiate the talent at the top, increasing the value of guys like Andrew Luck, Drew Brees, Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, who just got massive new deals. So how do I determine these ratings? Well, first and foremost, I look at film. Every Sunday night and Monday, I sit and rewatch every game from the week before. Thank you, NFL Game Pass. I take notes, and on a little side plug, I will tweet out the biggest plays I notice behind the scenes as I watch. You can follow me at TFG_football. I digress. When film cannot fully answer my rating for a guy, however, I can't see everything. I also, for the most part, look at the market. How much are teams paying players? Did a team draft or sign another player in hopes to replace a guy? Did a guy leave in free agency? If so, who took his spot? Why would that team be willing to let him go? All questions I ask when I tweak these ratings. Zach Brown, for example, is a Madden love child. He had multiple Ultimate Team Player of the Week cards last year and 4 abysmal years in Tennessee, followed up by a year in Buffalo with some great numbers, albeit in a few games, and he skyrockets to 85 overall. This offseason, however, the Bills say, thanks for your service, but no thanks, we no longer need you. Well, an 85 overall player should have been given a contract almost instantly. Well, actually, Zach Brown sat on the open market for weeks before agreeing to a measly 1-year, $2 million contract with the Redskins. How about Joe Hayden? All the stories last year in the echo chamber were about how bad he was last year for the Browns. Well, those that followed my updates last year, I stuck my neck out for Joe Hayden. Ask any corner to be successful behind that Browns pass rush, and you'd be asking too much of him. Well, the Browns release him in the morning, and by noon, half the teams in the NFL were stuck on hold with his agent trying to sign the guy. He got a very nice deal to go to the Steelers. So Zach Brown goes from an 85 to a 76. Joe Hayden goes from an 81 to an 86. If creating Madden ratings is about ranking how the league views a guy, what a better tool to look at than the market itself. Now, I get tons of criticism on my ratings, as is part of the business, as of what I'm trying to do. Typically, people will refer to the stats, or even worse than that, the front page story, sports echo chamber BS that is far too often relayed in Madden ratings themselves. A Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, most of the Giants roster. Often the big fallers on my roster seem to be the guys that everyone loves. The guys you see on SportsCenter every single damn day. And I hear all of it. How dare you? Kirk Cousins led the league in air yards per target, you Lorenzo Alexander had 12.5 sacks last season. Andy Dalton led the league in quarterback rating for 2 years. Dak Prescott was an MVP candidate last year, you dipshit. Look, stats and storylines are what they are. They can be a nice tool if used correctly, but are often way overblown. And via the echo chamber that is ESPN and NFL Network, it's often all people hear about. But there is much more behind evaluating the NFL, and I will take what my own eyeballs can see on film and what the NFL market itself says about guys' value over any stat or Monday morning episode of SportsCenter all day, every day. So folks, you can enjoy this roster or don't. Remember, if you don't like my ratings changes, nobody's forcing you to use them. You can find the roster as Real 2018 only on Xbox One file share for Madden 18. I do have my old roster on Madden 17, but it is no longer seeing updates. And furthermore, be sure to subscribe and tune in for my weekly roster update shows that will be aired here on YouTube every Wednesday around noon during the NFL regular season, every Friday for my 5 picks of the week and my weekly power rankings update, and on Sundays before the kickoff of NFL Sunday Night, I will air my week's game from the 32-man subscriber league where I play as Carson Wentz and the Eagles. Also, this year I have released a spreadsheet fully detailing every change that I have made during this massive roster update. I really hope you guys enjoy the roster. I hope you give me feedback on the players you think deserve a change, but do keep in mind the average rating on my roster is much lower, as you can hopefully understand now after watching this video. So a link to the spreadsheet is available in the description, as is a link to my Patreon, guys. If you think my roster adds value to your Madden experience, as I mentioned, this was a pretty hefty project. This is the only time you're going to hear me mention this, but if you want to show your gratitude for what I'm doing, any support on Patreon would be greatly appreciated, and I will be offering added benefits to my patrons at a further date. So cheers, everyone. Enjoy the roster, enjoy football season, and we'll see you for the next one.